Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
What's up, kiddos? Welcome to the Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on Twitter at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. You know the rules. If you step into my mentions with nonsense, I will absolutely embarrass you in front of all your friends, and I will not apologize. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's have a discussion. Today, the website I write for, the Undefeated, unveiled the final top 10 of the top 50 black athletes in history. And number one was one Michael Jeffrey Jordan. A little bit of controversy there. A lot of people talking about how is it possible that Jackie Robinson was second, Muhammad Ali was third. Obviously, this list is flawed. Number one, let's break down what it was specifically just so that you understand. 10,350 adults were asked, by the way, this was in April, 10,350 adults were asked to rank 200 athletes on 20 different surveys. Respondents were asked how great of an athlete each person was or is using a scale of 1 to 10 stars. The athletes were ranked in order based on their average scores to form a top 50 list. Each athlete was ranked on 4 factors: overall ranking, dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. Average scores were calculated from each factor to create a composite score, and athletes were ranked in order by their composite score to determine our final list, which was unveiled today in finality. Later, the Undefeated is going to break out how the public voted, broken down by race, age, gender, education level, and census region. But for now, we're going to talk about the list. Now, let me explain something off the top to everybody, just so that we're clear on where I stand about this as a fan first and as a journalist second and as a radio host third. I don't like Michael Jordan. Simple as that. I don't have a problem with Michael Jordan, but I do not subscribe to him as some long-term stan or fan, and never really did. Did I like Michael Jordan when I was a kid? Sure. Did I respect Michael Jordan when I was a kid? Absolutely. But my dad was one of those guys that was like, no, you're not getting Jordans. Number one, they're too expensive, and B, you might get shot. Which was a real deal thing in the 80s and 90s in D.C., not just some pipe dream scary thing that people actually said, so don't come at me with that. Number two, Michael Jordan ruined my Wizards. All right? Came to the franchise, drafted Kwame Brown, came out of retirement, skipped town, and everything was, burned to the ground. I'm not a huge fan of this guy. Just as a matter of course. Tremendous basketball player, obviously. But for people to tell me that it's unconscionable that he somehow beat out in a public survey Muhammad Ali is completely wild to me. Let's be clear about something. A lot of people did not like Muhammad Ali until he was unable to talk anymore. Jim Brown said that, I believe, on the Dan Le Batard show some years back. His point being, let's not act like this dude was some super popular guy for the entirety of his career. That's one component of this. The secondary component of it is this. He represents something to a very specific swath of America that I think must be identified here. There's a lot of people in this business now who defend every single thing Ali was about because it was their first eye-opening experience to what most of Black America dealt with every single day. And it was brought to them in a package that was the greatest boxer they'd seen up until that point, probably the greatest orator they'd seen up until that point, and a heroic figure in terms of the manner in which he presented everything he did. So they're never going to fall out of love with what Ali represented to them. But the connection that so many people force themselves to make between this notion of if you are not down with the revolution or if you are not speaking up against the man, then you are somehow unable to make a major social impact as a black person? Come on now. Number one, that's deleterious of so many different things that our people have done over the course of time. And number two, that's intellectually dishonest. So when you tell me that all Michael Jordan did was sell some shoes, well, A, you see how many shoes he sold, my guy? You taking a look at that brand recently? You want to understand what's going on there? Don't tell me that didn't have social impact. Positive, negative, political or not, the social imprint of Michael Jeffrey Jordan is major. Nike ain't Nike without Michael Jordan. And Nike pretty much runs everything now. Understand that. Also understand where the NBA fits into all this. When the NBA decided the global market was going to be something important was after the Dream Team became so popular in the 1992 Olympics. We'll get to that later in the show. 25th anniversary shouts to the Dream Team. So think about how these things came together. Jordan's popularity from a marketing and a product standpoint, the popularity of the NBA from a global game standpoint, and thus by extension basketball. And then think about plainly the media world that exists now versus what existed when Ali was in his prime. On a simple numbers, eyeballs, and ears scale, there's no way you can really compete with Michael Jordan. He blew that all out of the water. And as an aside, this is sort of what comes up every single time I talk about who's better at basketball. It's impossible for some people to even take that out of their minds when they think about the actual basketball on the court when it comes to Jordan. Because they can't get the marketing part out of the way. But if you're having a discussion about his overall impact on the globe as a black athlete, oh yeah, that's all there. And this is not to denigrate Ali's legacy by any stretch of the imagination. That would be ludicrous and foolhardy. But don't come at me with this nonsense about how Jordan was just another dude selling sneakers. And because he said Republicans buy them too, that he wasn't out there with a fist in the air, that somehow his social impact was unimportant. Don't be that person that conflates struggle with protest. Don't be that person that presumes that a black person's got to make somebody mad in order for their social impact to be of importance. All right? Jordan, as much as it pains me to say as a personal non-fan of his, is absolutely tremendously in the argument as the number one most impactful black athlete of all time. There's just no way around that. Now, whether or not you agree with his personal politics or what he chose to do with his money or his pulpit, okay, that's a discussion we can have in the lane of the actual topics themselves. But you can't just take him out of the pool because you happen to not like the shorts he was wearing when he was in it. That just doesn't make sense. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Tuesday, talking about the top 50 greatest black athletes of all time. The Undefeated list came out, partnered with SurveyMonkey. I want to get your thoughts on this. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. There were a lot of problems with this list, in my personal opinion. But then again, remember the setup. It's a survey. It wasn't me and a bunch of the crew sitting around in a room talking about who going to have, who we not going to have. There's some monster omissions on this bad boy. But it speaks to what people remember and what people care about, which, again, I find fascinating. Tiger Woods not on the list. I got bird brains in my mentions telling me, well, he said he's not black, so he shouldn't be on. He's Kaplan Nation, yada, yada. Come on, man. Girl brain. All right. I'm a guy that grew up watching tons of sports just like most of you out there listening. Golf was a thing when I was a kid. We're talking early 90s. Tiger comes along. Golf is a totally different thing all of a sudden. I got my aunts and uncles asking me about what's going on. People are following the game that never followed it before. Good thing for golf. Tiger Woods' career falls apart. His social life falls apart. I stopped watching golf. And I never thought that would happen. Not because I was so into golf, but I just assumed because it was part of my life before Tiger that it would be potentially afterwards. It's not, fam. Your man is not tuning in on Sundays. And I got no problem with the game. It's just something that's moved outside of my ecosystem from a sports fan standpoint. So that was a major omission. Deion Sanders, not on the list. I mean, I said on SportsCenter today with Kerry Champion Coast to Coast that I could scream for an hour about Deion. Well, guess who's got an hour today? I might just have to do it. 3 sports in college. Once played in a first game of a doubleheader. Went and ran a leg of a relay on the track. Came back, played the second leg of the doubleheader. That was just in college. He's also the only guy that's ever played in a World Series and a Super Bowl. He also played in an NFL game and a Major League Baseball game in the same day. So there's that. And don't come at me with Bo Jackson because I'll embarrass you once again. But Bo was a good player. He wasn't Deion. I'll cut a guy some slack for injuries cutting short their career. I'm not going to add to anybody's legacy for something that didn't happen. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. When we come back, going to take a couple of your phone calls. I want to see what you have to say about this list. Not everybody agrees with everything. And remember, it's a survey done by the public.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Talking about the top 50 list. The Undefeated unveiled it, at least the last 10 today. A lot of people had some issues with it. Michael Jordan was at the top of the list. We just want to remind everyone, 10,000 plus people were surveyed via SurveyMonkey for this bad boy. It wasn't just me and the squad sitting in the back room. That's not how it came together. Adults were asked to rank 200 athletes on 20 different surveys. Respondents were asked how great of an athlete each person was or is using a scale of 1 to 10. And the 4 overall factors were overall ranking, dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. I mentioned last segment that it's not at all crazy that Michael Jordan was at the top. What world have you been living in the past 30 years? Sure, the world is bigger than the last 30 years. I get that. But things move a little faster and things are a little bigger these days. That's just how it works. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Tony in North Carolina, what do you think about the list?
Well, I didn't see the entire survey, so I'm really commenting on what I just tuned in and heard you say about Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali. But I think Michael Jordan certainly deserves to be one at the top because, you know, as a black athlete from a talent standpoint, it's unquestioned. But one of the influential items that black people tend to struggle with is economically. And Michael Jordan certainly has been a successful businessman, and he moved the needle in marketing and branding to a new level. And as a black athlete, he represents black people. And when you hit it on that large of a scale, it allows other people to look at him and say, yeah, Michael Jordan was a great athlete. He did this. But also now, yeah, other black people can be successful and smart and all that. And in terms of Muhammad Ali, he had audiences that just were, you know, just phenomenal. And the biggest point that I think you made is you don't have to be combative to be influential. And if a minority gets stuck into that rut, it's really sad. So for these people to move the needle influential and not be combative, I think is just tremendous. So I just wanted to get that point in. So that's it.
Thanks for the phone call, Tony. That was a good call. And not because he happened to agree with me. But, yeah, I mean, that's all I'm saying, man. We don't got to all be fighting and yelling and screaming. The fact that Jordan was as marketable as he was, you can get out there and say, oh, he was just a shill for corporate America and $1 billion company. Who you think got them there, Leroy? Jordan was a daggone good player who people liked to watch. The hardest thing in America is getting people to like you. He was pretty good at it. And I don't even like him myself that much. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Derek in Ohio, what are your thoughts on the list?
Hey, Clinton, where was my guy from Ohio State, Jesse Owens, at on that list?
I think he was at 4 or 5.
Okay. That's respectable, I guess. That was a long time ago, so people surveyed may not know, but all right, that's respectable, I guess. That was the first person I thought of, though, when you said, you were going to name off the top 10. That was the first person I thought of.
Cool. Appreciate the phone call. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Shannon, can you hit us with the top 10 people on the list?
Sure. I'll start from 10 through 1.
Yep.
Number 10, Jerry Rice. Number 9, Gabby Douglas. Number 8, Simone Biles. Number 7, Hank Aaron. Number 6, Serena Williams. Number 5, Jesse Owens. Number 4, Willie Mays. Coming in at 3, Muhammad Ali. Number 2, Jackie Robinson. And number 1, Michael Jordan.
Thank you, Shannon. I almost think there's a larger discussion to be had about the fact that Robinson is 2 and not 3 over Ali. Like, if you're going to argue that Ali should definitely be, I don't know. There's an interesting discussion there between 1, 2, and 3 that I don't think necessarily is just about unseating Michael Jordan in that situation. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Tuesday. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Eric in Michigan, what do you think about the list unveiled today?
Thanks for taking my call. After hearing that top 10 list, I'm kind of a little disappointed that Serena Williams is, not saying this point she's up that high, but that she's higher than Arthur Ashe. And without Arthur Ashe paving the way, there are a lot of tennis players that wouldn't even be getting the time of day.
Thanks for the phone call. Althea Gibson's pretty high up there as well. That's a good call. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Let's remind you, though, it's a survey. People were asked to rank these things based on their own opinions, which is always interesting to think about what folks' impact level is when it comes to various people in the public eye. I'm not saying it's a don't blame me situation. I'm saying that, to me, is as illuminating a fact as anything, is that they surveyed nearly 10,000 or more than 10,000 people about this list. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Nico in Chapel Hill, what's good?
Yeah, hey, this is Nico. So listen, one other way to kind of gauge who's in the top 10 for this list, and especially with regard to fame and impact on society, if you're able to leave the United States, go to Europe. I lived in France for 2 years. I just moved back to the States. And the names Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali are the only 2 figures on that top 10 list who I could name that were just 100% unanimously understood by everyone on the dinner table with whomever I was with at any point in time. I mean, there are not many other people that you can say that about. Thank you for taking my call.
Pas de problème, monsieur. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Steven in Phoenix, what's good?
Hey, what's going on, man? I just want to say, Bill Russell not being in the top 10, that is ridiculous, man. The things that he did, he was influential, 11 rings, he was a coach, too. I don't get it. Michael Johnson was in front of him, and he got busted for steroids. Thanks, man.
Thanks for the phone call. And I'm going to get to that quickly before we move on. That's an interesting point, and that's one of those things where time becomes a factor. Unfortunately for Bill Russell, the world's greatest historian, YouTube, you look up Bill Russell highlights, Shannon, 95% of them are in black and white. That's just a factor of time. Bill Russell should probably be much higher on simple player-coach championship alone. The concept of the player-coach winning anything is just so insane to me on so many levels. But, yeah, there's some things you have to allow for here. And I'm not saying that I'm defending every single place, but I can understand where certain people have pitfalls versus others. It's not an easy thing to get through.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Had a little stunt casting today around the network. Got to admit, I enjoyed this a little bit. When I first heard that ESPN was bringing the Ocho back, I thought about a couple things. Number one, how much life dodgeball has gotten just in general out of like pop culture references that I don't know that everybody would have predicted when that movie came out. Like, it was a funny premise. And sure, it did well in the box office, I think. But I also feel like it was one of those ones where, like, you didn't walk out of that movie saying all the lines, but it got late love, and you realized that there were a lot more funny moments in that movie than you might have remembered. I feel like it got a late sort of cable run, maybe not cable, but it had a long tail for its influence from a social standpoint. Long story short, the idea behind the Ocho, if you've never seen the movie Dodgeball, is that the Dodgeball Championships are aired on a fictional network called ESPN 8, the Ocho. Now, I'm fairly certain that if you counted out all the ESPN networks, you could name any one of them the Ocho if you just so chose to. But in this case, they did it with ESPNU, and they decided to start airing a bunch of like wild events: disc golf, roller derby, trampoline dodgeball, the Firefighters World Challenge, the Kabaddi World Cup Final. Which, if you don't know what Kabaddi is, it's basically Combat Red Rover. It's dope. The Bags Championship, a.k.a. Cornhole. The Moxie Games, which I've never even heard of. And video games, Shannon.
Now, this one has a special place in my heart because they were airing there the Street Fighter, I think Street Fighter 5 championships. And I was a Street Fighter kid, so much so where I used to go to the local corner store, and I would be there for hours just watching dudes play Street Fighter. So when I saw this was on TV today, I was locked in. Like, I'm sitting here in studio, supposed to be doing show prep, and I'm glued to the television, wondering why some dude is out here using Zangief and another dude's using Charlie. Totally confused.
Zangief's a grapple character, we may find out. I only know that because I was watching one time the other night in the hotel room bored, and I was like, you know what, let me flip this bad boy on. I wasn't that good of a Street Fighter player, though. I played at an arcade in San Diego a couple weeks ago. Shouts to my buddy Slim. I was out there, and we played. But that was about it. I was not a huge Street Fighter guy. What was your go-to game, Shannon?
Probably one of the Marios. I would say either the first Mario, maybe Mario 3, or the aforementioned Street Fighter 2. I mean, I was a big Street Fighter fan.
For me, like if I had to go to the wall and play on TV, it'd probably be one of the early 90s NHL games, maybe GoldenEye. I know I wasn't the best player even at my school in GoldenEye, so I'm not even trying to act like I'm some beast, but I would just like to do it on N64 or FIFA 99.
But that's like one of the beauties of video games within itself, because amongst your little circle of friends and family, you may have been the best player, and you think you're unstoppable until you expanded your universe and played somebody either from another neighborhood or another city, or you went off to college and played somebody. It was like finding out that aliens existed. Like, we are not alone in this universe. There's actually somebody that's better in this game than I am.
This is basically why I stopped playing video games on any competitive level once I went to college. Because it was almost like, you know what, it's okay if it's not fun with people that you know you're going to see every day, or people that you've already established your relationships with. It's not fun when you're at somebody's house in college and folks are drinking and you might get into a fist fight. You might have to throw them hands up over what's going on the Mario Kart stage. Things can get testy if you talk too much trash. And so for me, that's when video games became you know what, fam, go ahead, be you. I'm just going to try to compete and win. I ain't out here trying to defend my honor over these sticks. Shannon, I don't know about you, but I have phased out video games to something that is just now competitive fun with me, myself, and my friends, not necessarily something I'm going to the wall for.
Right. That's where I am. I'll play every once in a while with my son, just on the very basic level. Like, playing 2K, I know how to shoot, pass, steal, the very basics. Learning how to lean with the shot and setting up the off. I don't have time. I don't have the mental energy to learn how to do all of this stuff. So, yeah, it's at a very novice level for me. That's what I can give right now.
All right. I play FIFA on Xbox. Dominic Foxworth gave me an Xbox. That's why I have one. Shouts to Fox. But, yeah, that's all I play. I have one game. I play one game with my friends. They come over. That's what they do. Kabaddi, though, I'm telling y'all, if you don't know what Kabaddi is, check it out. You remember the old playground game, Red Rover? Red Rover, send your homeboy over. And you try to get back. You try to tag and get back, all that. They found a way to make this like a combat sport in India, and it's awesome.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Right now, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Flipping things over to the NBA. Former Cleveland Cavaliers GM David Griffin said on Monday that if Kyrie Irving asked for a trade the way he did it courageously. He was on the jump on ESPN, and he basically said, most dudes aren't really going to go about it that way. Guys leak stuff to the media. Guys got all sorts of rumors going on Instagram and so forth. Let's hear his words exactly from the jump.
Well, I think Kyrie's going to end up getting traded. But I think what Ron was saying is really unfair to Kyrie. I don't think this is youth and ignorance. This is a guy who handled this situation exactly like he was supposed to. He went to Dan Gilbert privately, told him that he thought he would be happier somewhere else. The absolute worst thing this guy could have done was pretend to be all in and sink the ship from within. Most guys don't have the courage to do what he did. So that's not youth and ignorance. That's a little bit more courage than people give him credit for.
Props to David Griffin on that. This was not a narrative we'd heard a lot about. Most people coming out and saying, and I was one of them, what's Kyrie's problem? What's he complaining about? You don't want to play with LeBron? A couple days later, people started to understand, yeah, you know what? General James might not be the guy you want to go into battle with anymore. That became a little bit more understandable. Kyrie's, 25 years old? A little tired of getting sunned by old man LeBron, and not just old man LeBron, but old man LeBron and his squad. Sort of reminds me of a situation like when I grew up. My best friend lived down the street. We happened to go to the same school across town, so basically he was one person I hung out with no matter what at all times in the neighborhood. He also had 3 older brothers who were constantly clowning me. It was all love, but after a while I was like, man, tired of going over your house sometimes. I ain't trying to hear from your brothers every time I'm over there. That'll change when we all grew up a little and I got a smart mouth on me and started telling people why they were foolish. But my point is this. Kyrie doesn't have to like LeBron. And the fact that he went out of his way to even go about this through the proper channels, I think Griffin has a point. Courageous is not quite the word I would use. I would just say intelligent and respectful. I mean, walking into a guy's office saying, hey, I want out. I mean, sure. It's not like he loses anything by doing that. So courage is not quite the word I would go with. But I see his point. It's not every day now that an athlete presents a piece of information to the people that it's most important to without making a scene about it. I mean, not to say anything wrong about Vince Wilfork, but I mean, look at that situation. He retired with a commercial. Awesome commercial. I'm just saying, thinking about that versus Kyrie walking into an office and just simply saying directly to Dan Gilbert, I'd like to go. I've gained a little bit of respect for Kyrie Irving in this situation. That's not to say I had none. That's just to say that my mind has changed drastically since this news first came out. And in many ways, I'm kind of rooting for Kyrie in the next stage. Because it was real easy to look at him as selfish and whiny, and sort of maybe overly concerned about the wrong things. For a while, I even wondered how much he liked playing basketball. Because it didn't seem like he was really that into the processes if his idea of fun was leaving LeBron. But as this all comes together, you start to see how this makes sense. If LeBron's out anyway, what am I hanging around for? Ain't nothing here for me. He already got the ring. It's not like he's got anything to prove in Cleveland. He was on that team. He played in those finals. He sold those sneakers. He sold those jerseys. Kyrie moving on from Cleveland is just another guy in the NBA going to another team on the whole. It's not like LeBron leaving the first time. It's not even like some of these guys who sort of stay at teams for a while, gain a connectivity, and then sort of jump to try to chase the ring. It's not that at all. Kyrie is a young man. He's got plenty of years ahead of him. I'd go so far as to say that the next team he plays for, presuming they win a ring, might be the team you end up remembering Kyrie for more so than even the Cavs. Don't rule out that possibility. Very much possible. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on ESPN Radio. I just wonder where he's going to go. And I wonder if, because of the way this went down, the Cavs are going to grant him his wish and how the fans are going to feel about that. Like, if you're Cleveland, are you mad at Kyrie? Are you thinking, man, you could have just hung around one more season to figure this out with Bron? Maybe if y'all had won one more, everybody could have convinced everybody else to stay. There's a little bit of a problem with that, though. And the problem is that it's still Cleveland. Like, that's not a super knock on Cleveland. I got many peeps in C-Town. But ultimately, if you're somebody that's trying to be a superstar, and I don't mean like, oh, yeah, I can make a lot of money, and oh, yeah, I can just sort of be in a fair amount of commercials, I think Cleveland might be a little bit more limiting than people think. Not on some small market, you can't make cash. Everybody can make cash in the NBA now. That's not my point. My point is that there are higher profile teams in the league, whether or not LeBron James is on that or not. Cleveland ain't one of those teams. Kyrie Irving is going to go somewhere, and he might have a little something to prove. I'm very, very intrigued as a result of knowing that he wanted out in a way that wasn't just presumably a knee-jerk reaction. I'm very interested to see how this next phase goes. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. I wonder what Cleveland fans think, though. Hit me up. Do you root for Kyrie on the way out? Are you happy that he was at least straightforward about it? Are you sort of mad that LeBron has intimated that he may be gone, and as a result, you can't keep your team together? Now, look, I've said many times before, nobody's going to be mad at LeBron in the long term. He got y'all the ring. Fans of the Cavs are never going to have a hard part in their heart anymore once that ring came.
The Cavaliers face quite the conundrum right now when it comes to Kyrie, because I don't know if you saw this with Nike getting the licensing deal for NBA jerseys. The Cavaliers will have new jerseys this season. So if you're a Cavs fan, do you avoid buying a Kyrie jersey knowing that there's a chance that he could be traded?
Jersey chalk talk. Good question. I don't wear jerseys anymore, so I'm not as in on the jersey buying mindset as the common fan. So we'll have to go to the phones on that. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Let me complete that thought on LeBron, though, which is what I'm saying is that how long, rather, are you allowed to be upset at LeBron for this? For saying, yo, man, I mean, I get it, these 2-year deals, et cetera, you have that right, so on and so forth, but, like, it's hard for us to build. It's not like full-blown anger. It's more like, it's not getting into a car accident with your parents' car. It's more like blocking them in when they need to go to the grocery store and you ain't home. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Curtis in Ohio, what do you think about the Kyrie situation?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. I fully support Kyrie, and I'm a Cavs fan, but you don't like it. He did it in a classy way. He didn't make a huge scene in the media, and, I mean, there's been a few cryptic tweets or whatever. You know, Bron does the same thing, so it's no big deal. And Cavs fans need to quit being dumb and burning his jersey, because the last time we did that, you know what karma is. We burnt LeBron's jersey, and then we started winning about 9 games a year. So just wish the dude luck. You know, hope he, doesn't win a championship against us, but, just move on.
Thanks for the phone call. All right. I'm willing to accept that. The guy hit one of the biggest shots in the history of the franchise. It's hard to be mad at that. I can understand a little frustration with LeBron, though. You're supposed to be keeping all this together. Not really happening. It's not to blame him by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that, obviously, it is critical to what's going on with the rest of the team. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Richard in Los Angeles, what do you think about this Kyrie-LeBron scenario?
Hey, I just wanted to say, I love the show, but I just want to say that I feel like Kyrie is being like a petulant child be honest with you. It's an ego thing. I mean, I want it to be my team. What is that? LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time, and it takes nothing away from the greatness of Kyrie. And much like Kobe and Shaq, later on in his career, he's going to go back and he's going to say, you know what? Why did I do that? We could have had X amount of titles no matter what happened. Now we won't. That's it.
Thanks for the phone call.
God.
Richard calling from the back of a flatbed truck. NWA and Fab Five Freddy Styles on your MTV Raps back in the 90s, Shannon. A lot of noise on that call. 1-888-ESPN. 1-888-729-3776. One last one. Tony in Arizona. What do you think about Kyrie?
Hey, man. I think that the Cavaliers really need to look at trading Kyrie. Otherwise, it's probably going to look like a Paul George situation where teams are going to know he wants to get out of there, and he may not get a whole lot of value. So I know the Cavs fans probably want one last run, but try to trade him away, get some prospects, build the team up.
Thanks for the phone call. They're not exactly in a tough spot, but they're in a spot where they certainly have to make a decision. And I think if you're a Cavs fan and you're the Cavs organization, that's all you can really ask from a player who actually has a demand. Sure, it might seem a little selfish, but then again, what are we all doing here? He's got a right to want what he wants. If he doesn't want to play there anymore, he doesn't want to play there anymore. Making a guy play against his will? Sure, not the worst thing in the world to get paid millions of dollars to play basketball. But it might affect your team down the line, and that's the decision that Dan Gilbert's going to have to make.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
I'm Clinton Yates filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. A lot of jokers in there today, but it's better than it was the day before, which is all I can really ask for. Right now, joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, it's the coach, Herm Edwards. Coach, I got to ask you first off, with this Jay Cutler situation, if you're Gase and you just say, hey, I got to get my guy, how much credence? I mean, like, have you ever been in a situation where you say, you know what, the stability is more important than the talent or the situation? I just got to get a guy in here who at this stage of the game knows what I'm talking about so I can move on to other things.
Well, that's one of the reasons. And I think the second reason is when you look at the guys that are available, he's probably the most talented, regardless of how you feel about the guy. And Gase knows him better than anybody. He actually coached him. You know, I was in a similar situation a couple of years with the Jets. We lose both quarterbacks in the first quarter, Chad Pennington, and we lose our second-string quarterback as well. And I at halftime, went in the locker room and called Vinny Testaverde. He's 42 years old, sitting on the couch, and said, "Vinny, can you come back?" He said, "Yeah, Coach, I've been watching the game. You need some help, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." This is during the season now. I mean, this is during the season. Real live games are being played. And he comes back on, Sundays and shows up Monday. Doesn't start against the Ravens the following week. But the next week, he actually started and won a game for us. So I think if you're Miami, don't get caught up in Cutler's, the way he talks. He's not going to wow you with his presence of speaking. He's not going to be a guy that gets you excited. That's just not who he is. But what he does bring, he brings knowledge of the offense. He has talent. He has great pocket awareness. His problem in his career has been very simple. He turns the ball over a lot, and Coach Gase knows that. But I think if you're Jay Cutler, you're excited about the guys you're playing with and the team you're playing on.
How much better do you think he makes this team?
Well, he's better than any quarterback you have there on your roster right now. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think he can carry your team. He's good enough, though, where in moments when you got to make throws, he can make those throws. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he can do that. He's always had talent as far as when it comes to arm and all those things. He's nifty enough to move in the pocket. He has great pocket presence. He's just not going to wow you. He's not going to wow you as a leader. He didn't have to lead in Chicago. He had Brian Urlacher there. He was just a quarterback. I mean, that's what he wants to do. He's going to play quarterback. I tell you this too. You start covering this guy, the one thing he is, he's honest. He's going to tell you how he feels. And, sometimes you look at him and say, why did he say that? Because that's the truth. That's how the guy feels. I've always told people this. If you watch Jay Cutler on the sideline, you're probably going to be disappointed in the fact that you're going, why does he always look like he's sucking lemons? Like, it's just his facial expressions. You're like, really? What is he doing over there, right? But that's just who he is.
We're talking with Herm Edwards here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today to find out how much Progressive could save you. The situation in Denver is an interesting one. They're rotating quarterbacks in the preseason. Does that really help anyone? How do you determine talent from a snap standpoint with that kind of a setup?
Well, very difficult. And here's the problem. When you're the head coach, that means that job is wide open. And that's not a good feeling, to be quite honest, going into the preseason not knowing who your quarterback is. And you're basically telling these guys, well, somebody win the position. You actually walk in that room every 2 days and say, somebody just win the position. Don't make me have to make a decision. Well, somebody just stand up and go win this job. Remember, these guys have been competing since OTAs and mini camps. Now they're going to get to play, but still, you want somebody to win the job.
Even in preseason, though, I guess what I wonder is everybody looks at preseason and sort of says, well, hey, nothing really counts here anyway. How do you – outside of obviously looking like, the next best thing, how do you win a job if it's still so close at this stage of the game?
Here's the deal when you're the coach. Score doesn't matter, but performance does, especially from your good players. This is where you prepare yourself for the season, and especially at the quarterback position. You're going to ask these guys to do some things. Obviously, you are going to let them throw the football. You're going to let them make decisions. Now, you can't always dictate what's going to happen in the preseason game because of the flow of the game. It's a little bit different than a regular season game. But you're going to actually let them throw the ball maybe a little bit more than you would in the regular season just to see how they handle themselves so you can make a decision.
Right. Herm Edwards joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Deshaun Watson is apparently the man down there in Texans camp. Mm-hmm. Did you have any concerns about, starting a rookie week 1 going into this season?
Dallas did it.
That's a good point.
The Philadelphia Eagles did it, right? I mean, 2 teams in the division did it. Now, Dallas obviously, had a greater advantage than Philadelphia in the fact that they got an outstanding offensive line and got a really good running back, and that offense was pretty much set now. And this was a balanced offense. They actually ran the ball more than they threw it. You didn't ask him to do a whole lot. Philadelphia Wentz threw the ball over 600 times, and it showed up there in the middle of the season. He hit a slump. Defense kind of bailed on him a little bit, didn't play well, and he was forced to throw a lot of passes. But I just think this, if you're Houston and you're looking at your situation, and maybe Watson doesn't start early, but I think if you're on that team, just like coaches, I've always told players this, when you go to work every day, and that means when you put your cleats on, you go on the grass and you're working, and in the classroom you watch guys, you listen to your eyes, and your eyes don't lie. And it doesn't matter if the guy's a 10-year player, a first-year player, first-round draft choice, third-round draft choice. You watch how they prepare, you watch how they practice, and you listen to your eyes, and you come up with the right answer when you do that.
Going back to your Jets, Todd Bowles is in a tough situation.
Yeah.
How do you think he deals with just not knowing he just doesn't have the talent?
Well, you have to play defense. And they gutted the team. They made their run 2 years ago when they got Fitz. They drafted all these defensive players, felt like, hey, you know what, we got a defense that can compete. We got to get a quarterback now and surround him with some guys. And went and got Marshall, went and got some offensive players. It didn't work. So what did they do? They cut the cord. $50 million later, they let everybody go. We're going to go with young guys. They still have a nice defensive front. They drafted 2 young safeties. They're going to have to play defense. They know it. They're not going to score a lot of points. They can keep games close. But that's where you find yourself. And all Todd can do is coach the team, and he's going to have to live with his defensive special team.
Last thing I'll ask you, Coach. Brandon Albert said he was going to retire now. He's trying to come back to the Jags. If you're the coach, what do you say to this guy? What is the meeting like when you figure out that this dude a week ago said he wanted to retire, and now he's coming back into the facility trying to say, hey, what's going on?
It's funny about Brandon because I drafted Brandon.
Okay.
In Kansas City, and he was a guard coming out of Virginia. We put him at tackle week 1, and he's been starting tackle ever since. he bet on himself. He was gambling that, you know what, they're going to need to pay me. Well, they drafted Cam Robinson. And they sat there and waited and said, you know what, okay, you don't want to come back. So now he's coming back because he knows if he doesn't come back, first of all, he's got to pay that $3 million back. He doesn't want to do that. I know Brandon doesn't want to pay that money back. And so if you're the Jaguars and Tom Coughlin, he belongs to you, and you can do what you want with him. Is he worthy of something? Yeah. I mean, there's some tackles that have went down. And they're, you're the Giants are concerned with their tackle. I mean, Houston, they're concerned with one of their tackle spots. So he belongs to you. If I'm them, I'm just holding on to him, and just as his preseason continues to develop, he might be worth something.
He's the coach, Herm Edwards. He knows a lot more about football than I do, and I told him this when they had him on Mike and Mike. My mom's a big fan of his as well. Thank you, Herm.
Thank you, my brother. Talk to you later, man.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think what he had to say, Shannon, about the Cutler situation was interesting, which is that this is kind of not quite a stopgap, but basically, yeah, he just asked him a favor. I mean, that story about calling Vinny at halftime, though, are you serious?
He's in, right?
I mean, hold on. I don't know how the run of show goes at halftime for NFL locker rooms. I imagine the coach has some time to himself, but maybe not by himself entirely. Maybe he gets 5 minutes or so if you think about what he says to the team, what he says to his coaches in the position situations, then maybe gets a couple minutes to just sit and breathe and drink a water or whatever he's going to do. And he's going to use that time to call Vinny Testaverde, who's sitting on the couch. Talk. I'm laughing out loud thinking about that scenario unfolding in an NFL locker room and Vinny having the presence of mind to say, yeah, I'm watching the game. You guys can use me. That is an all-timer. I mean, I'm sure people knew that story. I didn't know that story. Made me laugh.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
So the Colin Kaepernick situation has taken another turn. This morning, film director Spike Lee promoted a rally that is going to be held for Colin Kaepernick in front of the NFL's headquarters in New York on Park Place on August 23rd. He says he didn't organize it. He says he didn't create it. He's just promoting it. It's a little awkward because, they misspelled his name in the tweet, but we're going to look past that. We're going to laugh at it, but we're going to look past it. Kind of kills the entire vibe right off top, but that's a different discussion. My thing is this. If nothing else, this indicates that not only is it bigger than football with NFL teams, well, it's now become bigger than football for the people who care about it. And I mean that in this sense. Look, it's one thing for every single talking head on the radio and on television to be having discussions about a random internal personnel matter in the NFL. Even with the NFL as America's most popular league from a television and, money-making standpoint. It's quite another to have Hollywood luminaries lending their voices to causes related to said league. That's a big jump. Now, Spike Lee is not a biggest jump because he's obviously such a sports fan. We see him on the sidelines at the Garden all the time. But don't think that his influence doesn't bring a completely different circle into this. There's online petitions. Numbers are pretty high for people who say they're going to boycott the NFL if Kaepernick doesn't get on a roster. People talk about, I'm not going to go to games. I'm going to start canceling television subscriptions. Some people I know and respect are doing this themselves. But if you ask me, I don't get that. I don't understand the connectivity to the issue if you're boycotting the league because Colin Kaepernick's not on a roster. Now, if what you're trying to say is, well, obviously they colluded. Obviously there was a whisper campaign. Clearly he's being blackballed. I'm not going to support this league. Okay. But ultimately that comes back as pub for the league. If you are saying every week, I'm not going to watch this league, and we are presumably operating with a finite amount of space and bandwidth for each one of us, To me, that's time that could be spent talking about what Colin Kaepernick was actually talking about when he decided to sit and kneel for the national anthem. Not knocking any of this other stuff. It just seems that specifically boycotting the league and being so vociferous about it further adds to the issue of the fact that we can't actually discuss the matter at hand. That's me personally. But the other thing here that's interesting is the date and the timing of this. The 23rd is week 3. It's the day before week 3 of the preseason. Last year, when Kaepernick first did this, was week 3 of the preseason. People seem to forget that he actually just sat on the bench during the national anthem the first time, and he talked to Steve Weish about it. And Steve Weish was the only person he talked to about it. And if you don't know what Steve Weish looks like, you can guess why he was the only person he talked to about it. It was weeks later when he took a knee in San Diego that most of this stuff became far more well known, and the hashtag incident went viral. But I mentioned Weish for a purpose. Newsroom diversity matters. Because in a situation like that, Kaepernick probably wouldn't have felt comfortable discussing that with just any reporter in that room. And that matters. Because those are the lower levels of sort of filtration that matter when it comes to coverage of sports and why having different people around instantly helps you. It's not just so that you can pop up and say, nah, fam, that's racist. Don't do that. Don't do this. It's because when the people you're covering feel as represented as they should, well, you're probably just going to get better stories. And it's just plain better for business. On a merit front, not just an optics front. Think about it. What if that happens and he doesn't say anything about it? Maybe it doesn't get reported, and maybe this isn't even happening. But he wanted it to be known. And he chose a writer of color to talk to about it. And now we are where we are. So if you're boycotting something or you want to lend your voice to a cause, think about that one. Who we got telling these stories? On top of the fact that people are getting gunned down in these streets by police officers whose lives are oftentimes never really changed, or they're getting hired back. Whether Colin Kaepernick plays again in the NFL or not, we don't know. But at this stage, some of these protests might be a little misguided.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
A little nostalgia day here. 25 years ago today, the Dream Team was awarded gold at the 1992 Barcelona Summer Olympics. They crushed everybody. Roster was stacked. Jordan literally in his prime. Win-loss 8-0. They scored 117.3 points per game. Differential 43.8. I need glasses. They're blowing people out by 40 points a game. And it wasn't just the games. It was everything around it. Guys were taking pictures during the game, asking their teammates to photograph them with the stars while they're getting destroyed. The guys were gallivanting around Europe. The stories coming out of that were legendary. People forget about the story about the college team they got beat by. The late, great Chuck Daly was the head coach. There's so many stories around the Dream Team. There's a cottage industry of documentaries around them alone. As there deserve to be. Because there's so many ridiculous little side tales going on as well. The main one of which being Jordan keeping Isaiah Thomas off the team. The pettiest move of all time. A secondary one being Christian Laettner making the team. Number one at all, number two over Shaquille O'Neal. That was controversial at the time. That was like the beginning of Hot Take Yates for those of you who are inquiring. I remember being real mad about that, like as a kid. Thinking, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem fair. And that's when you could tell, oh, that guy's getting certain things that other people aren't getting. This isn't going to turn into a whole Christian Laettner thing because it's not that serious. But the main thing that happened with the Dream Team was obviously the growth of the game. The world realized, basketball is tight at the highest level. Forget about this college nonsense with refs and game officials cooking up books to give people gold medals. Just get the best dudes out there and let them run and dunk. Games started growing a lot around the globe. Asia, Europe mainly. Even where the game had already was held in relatively high esteem. The popularity of that team boosted the value and the global reach of the NBA. But what's most funny to me about every single thing relating to the Dream Team is how their imprint affected American minds for what appears to be time immemorial. Like that one tournament, those 8 games, every American who watched that, maybe not every, but a lot, are basically going to go to their deathbeds thinking that they should never see the U.S. basketball team lose a game ever again. Like, it's not exceptionalism. Actually, it is, but that's a different discussion as well. But everybody's just like, oh, yeah, come on. This is what we do. It's like nobody even thought at the time that meant, yeah, everybody else is going to get a little better. And it's going to happen a lot sooner than you think. Not to say that the U.S. has just run out every tournament from here on out. They've had some rather famous L's. But what's funny to me is how much that storyline is still the main narrative with pretty much every single thing surrounding USA basketball. It's a matter of disproving the exceptionalism. Well, I mean, what's going on here? Looked like we had a little struggle against Australia. I had to look up from my tablet and see the score. Delhi's out here going nuts, and Patty Mills looks like he's having a good time. What is the problem? Well, you sort of probably should have changed your oil like 2,000 miles ago. Coolant's a little low. Radio's been broke. Got to have a little maintenance. Just because you got a Ferrari doesn't mean that bad boy's going to run smooth every single time you turn the key. And it's still so amazing to me how the one thing so many sports fans are going to hold on to is the notion that they're offended by anything less than absolute perfection from USA basketball. And it makes me laugh because is that always going to trump the actual game in your eyes? Like, what if you got a tournament in the Olympics, Shannon, that was just a bomb tournament? Like, okay, say U.S. wins or whoever wins. Like, if you got a lot of close games with a lot of different styles of play and a lot of different things that you aren't used to seeing, could you walk away satisfied if you knew the overall level of basketball was higher than just 40-point blowouts every week?
I think basketball fans who pay attention would probably understand, but for the casual fan who only pays attention to USA basketball every 4 years, they want 40-point blowouts, and that's all they're going to be satisfied with, even though we understand that the rest of the world has gotten better and has come a long way in these past 25 years. For some, for a lot, for the majority, they still look at it as, hey, well, every team representing USA has to be similar to the Dream Team in regards to the blowouts.
That's disrespectful to the Dream Team, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Understand what y'all had. That was the Dream Team. It wasn't just that they were the USA men's basketball team. There's a reason they had that name. Don't get me started on the Dream Team 2 and the Redeem Team. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. There was a reason they had that name. It wasn't just about their Americanism. That was the best collection of basketball players ever assembled in the history of the world. Of course they were blowing people out by 40. Sure, they might have lost focus during the preamble and lost to a college team who was out there playing them hard as they could. But if you're a casual fan, and I don't mean a casual fan of the Olympics, I mean a casual fan of basketball, I would presume that a better tournament overall would be more entertaining to you. Maybe not. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in here on ESPN Radio. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Dream Team, winning the gold medal at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. I got to say, I'm personally looking forward to the day when USA Basketball isn't expected to win every game. If for only a competitive psychological interest standpoint. Like, it's not healthy for me as a fan to look at every game as a failure that's not a blowout. That is in fact gotten boring to me at this point. And I know Bomani always says beat him down, yada yada. But for me, in the very specific cadre of Olympic basketball, y'all like the tournaments to be fun. I'm fine with them not being completely one-sided at all times. It does not inherently bother me as an American, as a basketball fan, or as a sports fan to note that the globe is actually improving at a little something I like to call baloncesto. And as this continues to happen, it will thus make the NBA better too. Styles will develop that to get better. You've already seen this. The way the NBA looks now is a direct result of the global influence on the game. Guys from other places coming in with just different styles of play entirely. That if they're good enough, you just got to adapt to. Never mind the diversity component. The NBA is playing games in Africa these days. They were in Joburg last week. My man Mark Spears from the Undefeated was down there covering that bad boy. The global diversity of the game is a good thing, not just, as I said before, for posterity's sake, but for the product itself. And the Dream Team kicked that off. Sure, they knew that it was going to be big, but I don't think there was any way that anybody could know what was going to come in the next 25 years. And what we have now is great. Even if it means USA doesn't always win the gold.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.